Imagine this. You have lived in the UK your whole life. You work hard, pay your taxes, and do everything right. You grew up believing that if you put in the effort, you'd be rewarded. A decent home, a secure job, a good quality of life. But somewhere along the way, things had changed. Your rent is eating up half of your salary, leaving you with just enough to scrape by. Your bills have doubled, but your wage is stagnant. A simple trip to the grocery store feels like daylight robbery as the price of basics like milk, eggs, and bread soar higher than ever. And then one day you get sick, not a minor cold, but something that actually needs medical attention. You call your GP only to be told the next available appointment is in 4 weeks. You try the emergency department instead, only to sit in a packed waiting room for 12 hours surrounded by other desperate patients. Adding to that, when you walk home late at night, there's always that creeping fear. Crime is on the rise, police funding is down, and if anything happens to you, the chances of getting justice are slim to none. At what point do you say, enough is enough? More and more Brits are reaching that breaking point. They're not just complaining, they are leaving. The UK, once a country people dreamed of moving to, is now a place people want to escape. But how did things get this bad? Why is Britain becoming unlivable for so many? Once upon a time, having a stable job in the UK meant you could afford a decent life. You could pay rent, put food on the table, save a little for the future, and maybe even afford some luxuries like a holiday once a year. But today, that reality is gone. The cost of living has skyrocketed to historic levels, and wages haven't kept up. No matter how hard people work, their money seems to disappear before the month is even over. Rent prices have become downright predatory. The average cost of renting a one-bedroom flat in London has soared past £2,000 per month. And even in cities like Manchester or Birmingham, tenants are paying 50% more than they did just 5 years ago. And so what does this mean in practice? It means more people are focused into house shares well into their 30s and 40s. It means couples who should be starting families are stuck living like students. It means people are paying thousands for tiny, damp, barely livable flats because there are no other options. And landlords, they keep hiking prices, knowing full well that renters have nowhere else to go. There are no rent controls, no protections, just an endless cycle of paying more for less. But rent isn't only one part of the nightmare. Utility bills are just as bad. In the middle of winter, you should be able to turn on the heating without thinking twice. But for millions of people, it is a luxury they cannot afford anymore. Energy bills have more than doubled in the past few years, with some households paying over £250 a month just to keep the lights on and the radiators warm. People are being forced to make brutal choices: heat or eat. Turn on the boiler and risk an enormous bill, or stay in the cold and use that money for food. Cook or conserve. Use the oven for a proper meal, or stick to cold sandwiches to save on electricity. Work from home or suffer. Many remote workers are now choosing to sit in freezing rooms all day because running the heating is too expensive. And yet, while ordinary families struggle, energy companies are making record profits. Bills keep rising, but the government does little to stop it. A few years ago, £50 could get you a full cart of groceries. Today, that same £50 might barely cover the basics. Food prices have shot up by more than 25% in just 2 years. Essentials now cost double what they did before. Meat is becoming a luxury. Fresh fruit and vegetables are increasingly out of reach, and supermarkets are shrinkflatting products, charging the same price for smaller portions. And it's not just about rising prices, it's about wages not keeping up. While food costs keep climbing, salaries have remained largely stagnant. The minimum wage increases every year, but inflation eats away any gains before people even see them. So what's the result? More people relying on food banks just to survive. Families cutting back on meals, children going to school hungry, and an entire country wondering how did it come to this. Public transportation isn't doing any better. For those who need to commute, public transport is yet another nightmare. Train fares in the UK are among the most expensive in Europe, but services are still delayed, overcrowded, and unreliable. A monthly rail pass can cost hundreds of pounds, yet passengers are still forced to squeeze into carriages like sardines. Buses? They're expensive too. And in many towns, services have been cut entirely, leaving people stranded with no affordable way to get to work. Driving isn't any better. Petrol prices are still painfully high, and car insurance has become so expensive that many young people simply can't afford to drive anymore. With rent, food, and energy bills eating up paychecks, more and more people are turning to credit cards and loans just to stay afloat. Personal debt in the UK is at all-time high, with millions relying on borrowed money for essentials. And with interest rates rising, the debt is becoming a trap. What starts as a small loan to cover groceries quickly spirals into thousands of pounds of repayments with no way out. The cost of living in the UK is more than just an economic crisis. It's a daily struggle for millions of people. People aren't just working to live anymore. They are working to survive. And for many, the question is becoming clearer every day. Is it even worth staying in the UK? Imagine you're 30 years old. You have a steady job, you've saved as much as possible, and you're finally ready to buy your first home. But then you check the property listings. £350,000 for a one-bedroom flat. That's the reality for young people in the UK today. Home ownership, once a symbol of stability and success, is now a fantasy for an entire generation. And renting isn't any better either. The idea of having a home, a space to call your own, is slipping further away. And that's pushing many people to look beyond the UK. Because in countries like Canada, Australia, or Germany, you can get a house for a fraction of the cost and still have money left over for a decent life. And even if you somehow managed to survive the property crisis, there's something even worse waiting for you when you actually need medical help. Once upon a time, the NHS was Britain's crown jewel, a symbol of world-class healthcare available to everyone for free. But today, it's on the verge of collapse. Patients wait months, even years for treatment. A&E, Accidents and Emergency Department, is overwhelmed, with ambulances queuing for hours. GP appointments nearly impossible to book. Over 7 million people are stuck on NHS waiting lists, some for over a year. Even emergencies aren't prioritized. Patients die waiting for care as hospitals run out of beds. Even though A&E targets say 4-hour waiting list, in reality, it's 12 to 20 hours before people get treated. Doctors and nurses are working unsafe hours for low pay. Junior doctors are barely making minimum wage, and mass resignations and strikes are crippling services. Those who remain are overwhelmed, and the government offers only empty promises. As the NHS fails, private healthcare is thriving. Those who can afford it jump the queue, while everyone else is left suffering in a system that's slowly becoming two-tier. It's obvious when healthcare becomes a luxury, survival is a gamble. For many, the only option left is clear: leave the UK before their health is on the line. As if the failures of the healthcare system is not enough, violence has become a daily reality in many cities of the UK. Knife crime has become epidemic. London alone sees dozens of stabbings every week, with victims as young as 12 years old. Gangs are recruiting teenagers, drugs are flooding communities, and police resources are stretched so thin that many cases never even get investigated. The growing unrest, crime, the cost of living, the housing crisis, the broken healthcare system, people are reaching their breaking point. Protests are becoming more frequent, strikes are paralyzing industries, and anger is spilling into the streets. People don't feel safe, they don't feel heard, and they don't feel like there's any future for them in the UK anymore. The truth is, people are leaving. Young professionals, skilled workers, even retirees, they are all looking for better lives elsewhere. In countries like Australia, Canada, and even some parts of Europe, they are now offering better wages, lower living costs, and a higher quality of life. Meanwhile, the UK seems to continue its decline with no real solutions in sight. So the question, is Britain still a place worth living, or is it time to pack up and leave? Let us know what you think in the comment section. Would you stay in the UK under these circumstances, or would you move abroad just for a better life? Thank you for watching. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel, and hit the notification bell.